the summer of 1913, the farmhouse sat isolated on a stretch of Pennsylvania farmland, far from the nearest town. The land was dotted with overgrown fields, thick patches of forest, and a narrow dirt road that twisted through the countryside like a forgotten ribbon. The house itself was modest, a two-story wooden structure with a sagging porch and windows that reflected the golden sunlight in the afternoons. From the outside, it looked peaceful, almost inviting. But there was something about the way the trees leaned over the house, casting shadows that seemed alive, that gave anyone passing by an uneasy feeling. The farmhouse was home to 3 cousins, Tommy, 12, Eleanor, 10, and Samuel, 8, who spent their days exploring the orchard, helping with chores, and playing near the barns. On that fateful summer day, the children's laughter echoed through the fields, carried by a warm breeze. It was the kind of sound that seemed innocent, almost timeless. But even as their parents called out from the porch, a quiet tension hung in the air. The wind whispered through the tall grass, and the creaking of the old barn door sounded louder than it should have, like some hidden presence was listening. Neighbors occasionally came by, though visits were rare. Stories circulated of strange happenings near the property, livestock acting strangely, fleeting shadows seen at the edge of the forest, and the distant sound of footsteps at night when no one was around. Some townsfolk even whispered that the land itself had a memory, that it held onto old secrets. But in 1913, these murmurs were dismissed as local superstition. Life on the farm carried on with the rhythm of chores, meals, and play, as if nothing could disturb the calm, sun-soaked days. That morning, the children set off toward the orchard earlier than usual. Tommy carried a small wooden slingshot, Eleanor had a basket for picking apples, and Samuel clutched a worn notebook he had taken to documenting the shapes of clouds. Their parents, busy with the morning's farm work, only glanced up occasionally, assuming the kids were safe. But from the moment they stepped out of the house, an odd hush seemed to follow them. The usual chatter of birds in the orchard was muted, replaced by the soft, almost imperceptible rustle of leaves in the wind. It was a quiet that made the hair on the back of one's neck stand on end. As the sun climbed higher, the farmhouse appeared even more remote. The long shadows from the barn stretched across the yard, and the sound of distant church bells drifted faintly from the town miles away. For anyone watching from afar, it was just another summer day on a quiet farm. But for those familiar with the land, something felt off, an unshakable sense that the farmhouse was more than it appeared. Hidden beneath its worn wooden beams and quiet rooms were secrets that the children would soon stumble into, secrets that would change the small town forever. The next morning started like any other, with the first rays of sunlight slipping through the farmhouse windows and painting the wooden floors in streaks of gold. But the routine warmth quickly gave way to an unsettling silence. When their mother called for Tommy, Eleanor, and Samuel to come inside for breakfast, there was no response. At first, she thought they might be hiding or playing in the orchard. But as minutes stretched into tense hours, the absence of their voices became impossible to ignore. The toys they had been playing with the previous evening still lay scattered across the yard, untouched, as if frozen in time. Their parents searched every corner of the farmhouse, calling the children's names with mounting desperation. They checked the barn, the storage shed, and even the edges of the nearby creek. Nothing. No footprints led away from the house, no signs of struggle, no clue to suggest they had wandered off on their own. It was as though the 3 cousins had simply vanished into thin air. The windows were all shut tight, the doors bolted, and yet outside, the orchard and fields were eerily undisturbed, showing no hint that anyone had crossed them in the past 12 hours. When neighbors arrived to help, the unease deepened. Dogs sniffed and pawed at the ground, but even their keen senses found nothing. A search party combed the nearby woods, the creek, and the farmland that stretched for miles. Some people whispered that the children must have wandered far, perhaps following a rabbit or chasing a butterfly. But those who knew the children insisted they would never have strayed that far alone. It wasn't just the disappearance itself. It was the way the farmhouse seemed untouched, as if reality had split around the children, leaving no trace behind. As news of the disappearance reached the town, fear began to take hold. Townsfolk exchanged theories in hushed tones. Some claimed they had seen flickering shadows in the farmhouse windows the night before. Others swore the wind carried whispers that didn't belong to anyone alive. Rumors spread of a curse tied to the old farm, stories of hidden tunnels beneath the house, and strange figures glimpsed near the orchard after sunset. The adults, desperate to make sense of the unexplainable, clung to any possibility, rational or not, yet nothing fit. Each passing hour seemed to make the mystery deeper and darker. Even days later, no one could find a clue. Food remained on the kitchen table. The swings in the yard swayed gently in the breeze, and the sunlight continued to fall on the empty farmhouse, mocking the desperate search for answers. The police were called, investigations began, and yet every lead ended in a dead end. The disappearance was so baffling, so unlike anything anyone had seen, that it left a lingering chill over the town. People began to avoid the farmhouse entirely, crossing to the other side of the street when passing by, as if the air around it carried the memory of something terrible. As the news of the cousins' disappearance spread through the small Pennsylvania town, a cloud of fear settled over the community. People spoke in hushed voices at the general store and the church, their eyes darting nervously toward the distant farmhouse. Mothers clutched their children tightly and warned them not to wander too far from home, while fathers walked the fields at night, lanterns in hand, checking every fence line and shadowy corner. The disappearance was more than a mystery. It was a threat that no one could define, a reminder that danger could strike even in the quietest, most familiar places. Whispers began circulating that something sinister had been watching the farmhouse for years. Old-timers told stories of flickering lights in the orchard at midnight, unexplainable noises echoing from the woods, and sudden cold drafts that would sweep through the farmhouse even in the heat of summer. Some claimed the land itself was cursed, holding grudges from generations past. Children refused to play near the barn or the orchard, while teenagers dared each other to approach the empty house and run back screaming. The town had transformed overnight into a place where fear was palpable and superstition thrived. Even the sheriff, a man known for his calm demeanor and practical approach, felt the weight of the townspeople's unease. Calls flooded in from concerned neighbors, reporting shadows moving near the farmhouse, strange lights in the windows, and figures glimpsed just beyond the tree line. The sheriff organized patrols and enlisted volunteers for nightly searches, but nothing concrete ever came of it. Every investigation seemed to lead to dead ends, and with each failure, the townsfolk's anxiety grew. They began to suspect that someone, or something, was deliberately hiding the truth from them. Rumors also began to fuel speculation about outsiders. Travelers passing through were eyed suspiciously, and anyone new to town was immediately a potential suspect. Some whispered that the cousins might have been taken by wandering criminals or even by a secret society rumored to operate in the nearby hills. Letters arrived at the sheriff's office claiming sightings of the children far from the farmhouse, but none were ever confirmed. The combination of fear, speculation, and rumor created an atmosphere in which reality and imagination blurred, leaving the town trapped in a haze of uncertainty and dread. Even months after the disappearance, the farmhouse remained a symbol of unease. People avoided it, and the orchard where the children had played became overgrown, a visible reminder of the unanswered questions. Town gatherings included nervous glances toward the empty fields, and any sudden sound, a door slamming, a branch snapping, would send shivers through even the bravest adults. What had happened to the cousins wasn't just a local tragedy anymore. It had become a legend, a chilling story passed down through conversations, warnings, and the fearful eyes of those who still remembered that fateful summer of 1913. Decades passed, and the farmhouse slowly sank into decay. Its wooden boards warped, paint peeled from the walls, and the orchard that once echoed with children's laughter became overgrown with weeds and brambles. By the 1980s, the memory of Tommy, Eleanor, and Samuel's disappearance had faded from daily conversations, reduced to whispers among the oldest residents. Yet the case files, tucked away in a dusty courthouse attic, lay untouched, pages yellowed with age, photographs curled at the edges, and witness statements faded but still legible. It was there, in that forgotten attic, that the first hints of hidden truths waited quietly, like a ticking clock long ignored. When a new sheriff stumbled upon the files while organizing the archives, he was initially struck by their sheer volume. Reports from neighbors, sketches of the property, and notes from the original investigation painted a picture of meticulous police work, but with glaring gaps. Some witness statements contradicted each other, timelines didn't add up, and peculiar details, previously dismissed, now seemed ominously significant. There were references to neighbors acting strangely, late-night visits to the farmhouse, and unexplained sounds that no one at the time took seriously. The sheriff felt a chill as he realized that the case might have been deliberately mishandled, or worse, suppressed. Among the most striking discoveries were a series of maps and diagrams, drawn by investigators long gone. Certain areas of the farmland were marked with symbols, lines, and notes that suggested hidden compartments or tunnels. One sketch indicated a patch of forest near the orchard where footprints had been spotted, footprints that never matched the children's sizes or shapes. Even more unsettling were marginal notes in faded ink, hinting that someone in the town knew more than they admitted. The sheriff's pulse quickened as he realized that these overlooked clues might finally hold the key to a mystery that had haunted the town for 70 years. The sheriff also found a set of letters carefully folded and tucked into the back of a case file. Written between various townsfolk, the letters hinted at whispered secrets, sudden disappearances of pets, and strange happenings on the outskirts of the property. Some of the letters even alluded to keeping things hidden and protecting the family, cryptic phrases that now seemed far more sinister. These fragments of evidence painted a picture of a community that had tolerated, or even participated in, a concealment that spanned generations. What had once seemed like superstition now had the texture of truth, revealing that the farmhouse's shadows extended far beyond its walls. Word of the rediscovery slowly leaked through the town, reigniting old fears. Even residents who had long considered the disappearance a closed chapter now felt unease creeping into their daily lives. Eyes darted to the farmhouse with renewed suspicion, and tales of flickering lights and strange noises resurfaced, now taken more seriously. The sheriff, realizing the enormity of the clues, began to prepare for a modern investigation, knowing that these forgotten pages and letters could finally uncover secrets that had been buried for decades. What had been silent for so long was ready to speak, and the town itself braced for revelations it had long avoided. By 2023, technology had transformed the way cold cases were solved, and the long-forgotten disappearance of Tommy, Eleanor, and Samuel drew renewed attention. Forensic experts, now equipped with tools unimaginable in 1913, revisited the farmhouse evidence stored in the courthouse archives. Every photograph, handwritten note, and object was scanned, analyzed, and cross-referenced with databases spanning the entire state. What had once seemed like mundane details, scratches on a floorboard, a torn piece of fabric, or a misplaced tool, suddenly became potentially critical clues in uncovering what really happened over a century ago. Digital forensics revealed anomalies in the original case files. Handwritten witness statements, when examined under enhanced imaging, exposed erased notes and corrections that suggested intentional omissions. Letters between townsfolk, once considered idle gossip, now hinted at collusion and secrecy. Certain names kept appearing, neighbors, relatives, and individuals previously dismissed as unreliable, each connected to peculiar behaviors and unexplained absences. The deeper investigators dug, the clearer it became that someone had known more than they ever admitted, and that the truth had been deliberately buried under layers of silence. DNA analysis, previously impossible, opened another avenue of investigation. Traces of biological material from decades-old items, clothing, toys, and letters, were analyzed against existing genealogical databases. Patterns emerged, linking distant relatives and current residents to the farmhouse in ways no one could have imagined. It seemed the past and present were colliding, as if the very walls of the farmhouse had preserved secrets waiting for technology to finally reveal them. Each lead sparked more questions than answers, deepening the sense of suspense and horror surrounding the long-lost cousins. Investigators also re-examined the surrounding property using modern surveying tools and ground-penetrating radar. Certain sections of the orchard and nearby woods revealed anomalies, areas where the soil had been disturbed repeatedly, as though something had been buried and then uncovered multiple times. These findings corresponded with the old maps and sketches found in the courthouse archives. It was as though the farmhouse itself held a memory, leaving behind physical traces of events that had occurred long before cameras, computers, or even formal records existed. As the town watched from a distance, the renewed investigation stirred old fears. Social media erupted with speculation, podcasts picked up the story, and journalists descended on the small community, eager to uncover the century-old mystery. Even longtime residents who had dismissed the farmhouse as haunted or cursed now felt a palpable sense of dread, realizing that decades of silence had only preserved the truth for those who were patient enough, or sinister enough, to keep it hidden. With each new discovery, the case grew darker, hinting that the answers might be more horrifying than anyone could imagine. In early 2025, after months of painstaking investigation, authorities finally obtained a search warrant for a property connected to the old farmhouse, a house that had remained in the same family for generations. As the team approached, the air was thick with anticipation, almost as if the wind itself was holding its breath. Neighbors watched from a distance, many recalling the stories of the vanished cousins, their eyes wide with disbelief and fear. The house, unassuming from the outside, now carried the weight of a century-old mystery, hiding secrets that had been untouched for over 112 years. Inside, the search team discovered a hidden compartment behind a false basement wall. Dust hung in the air, and cobwebs clung to every corner, untouched for decades. There, carefully preserved, were items belonging to Tommy, Eleanor, and Samuel, tattered clothing, a small toy, and even some handwritten notes. Each object told a story frozen in time, a haunting reminder of lives interrupted. The realization hit investigators with chilling clarity. Someone had deliberately kept these items hidden, almost as if daring time itself to reveal the truth. The arrest itself sent shockwaves through the town. The suspect, a descendant of the original townspeople, was taken into custody, their calm demeanor unsettling to onlookers. Questions flooded the sheriff's office. Why now, after more than a century? How could the family conceal such a secret for so long? The investigation suggested careful planning and knowledge passed down through generations, a silence maintained like an unspoken pact. The courthouse, the town square, and local media all buzzed with disbelief. People struggled to reconcile the century of mystery with the sudden reality of a person behind it all. Authorities revealed that the suspect had extensive knowledge of the farmhouse, its hidden passages, and even the surrounding woods. Interviews and background checks painted a picture of meticulous care, ensuring that no evidence was ever discovered, until modern technology made concealment nearly impossible. Investigators speculated that the suspect had been obsessed with preserving a family secret, and that the disappearance of the cousins had been part of a carefully orchestrated plan. The more officials learned, the darker the story became, suggesting a level of calculation that horrified even seasoned detectives. News of the arrest rippled across the country. Social media erupted, documentaries and podcasts began to cover the story, and the town that had long tried to forget now faced relentless scrutiny. Locals grappled with the fact that someone in their community could hold a secret so devastating for more than a century. The farmhouse, once just an eerie backdrop to a missing children's story, had now become the centerpiece of a nationwide mystery. And while the arrest answered some questions, it left others unanswered, sparking fear, curiosity, and speculation that would linger in the town and across America for years to come. Even after the arrest, the small Pennsylvania town felt the weight of the farmhouse's dark history. The streets, once filled with the casual chatter of neighbors, now carried an undercurrent of unease. Residents whispered about how such a secret could have been kept for over a century and wondered who else might have known. Families revisited old photographs and letters, realizing that people they had trusted and known for decades might have hidden sinister truths behind polite smiles. The very fabric of the town's history seemed shaken, as if the foundation of normal life had been built atop lies and fear. Many locals found themselves unable to drive past the farmhouse without a shiver running down their spines. Windows appeared darker, trees seemed taller, and the overgrown orchard felt alive in a way that made people step back, as though the land itself remembered the horrors that had occurred. Even those who had once dismissed the disappearance as an unfortunate accident now admitted to a lingering dread, a sensation that the shadows of the past were still watching. It became clear that the farmhouse and the events of 1913 were no longer just a story. They were a presence, haunting the town and everyone who had once walked near it. The social impact of the arrest rippled far beyond the local community. Reporters and documentary crews flocked to the town, drawn to the eerie blend of history, mystery, and human deception. Streets once familiar were now crowded with outsiders, and local gossip turned into public speculation. Longtime residents debated whether the events of the past had been isolated or part of a larger, darker pattern. Townsfolk who had never spoken of the farmhouse before were suddenly sharing memories of strange noises, flickering lights, and odd behavior from decades ago. Every recollection seemed to add another layer of unease, another thread to a tangled web of secrets. Even children in the town began to feel the lingering shadow of the farmhouse. Parents warned them not to venture near the old orchard, not to explore the woods surrounding the property, and to listen carefully to stories that were once dismissed as fairy tales. The events of 1913, once abstract and distant, had become a cautionary tale that influenced daily life. For many, the realization that horror had occurred so close to home and had been concealed so effectively left a lasting impression. The farmhouse was no longer just a location. It had become a symbol of the fragility of safety and the depth of human secrecy. As the town attempted to move forward, the questions refused to die. Who else had known? How many had been complicit? And why did the family wait so long to reveal the truth, if they ever intended to? Each answer discovered seemed only to uncover further mysteries, stretching the shadows of the past into the present. The legacy of the cousins' disappearance lingered, etched into the collective consciousness of the community. Even in daylight, when the farmhouse looked no different from any other abandoned structure, the town felt the invisible weight of a century-old secret, a weight that would not be forgotten. As the sun sets over the abandoned farmhouse, its windows reflecting the fading light, one truth becomes impossible to ignore. Some secrets refuse to stay buried. The laughter of Tommy, Eleanor, and Samuel may have vanished more than a century ago, but the shadows they left behind continue to haunt the town. For generations, the farmhouse held its silence, guarding the horror within. But now, even with arrests made and clues uncovered, the weight of the past lingers. The town may try to move on, but the echoes of that fateful summer of 1913 will never truly disappear. Every creaking floorboard, every whisper of wind through the orchard, serves as a reminder that some mysteries are not meant to be solved easily. And perhaps, somewhere in the darkness, the land itself remembers, waiting for the next curious soul to stumble upon its secrets. So, as we leave the story behind tonight, one question remains. If a secret can survive for 112 years, hidden in plain sight, how many others are still out there, waiting to be uncovered?
If you liked this video, don't forget to hit that like button, share it with your friends, and drop your thoughts in the comments below. Most importantly, subscribe and hit the bell icon so the next secret finds you first.